For this hour, Beth Fooey is a senior politics editor for NBC News. Michael Starr Hopkins served on the campaigns of President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Delaney. He's a founding partner of North Star Strategies. And John Halderwanger is a senior politics reporter for Business Insider. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for being with us. My old friend Beth, I'm going to start with you because you and I, as you know, I've told people on the show, I learned most of what I know about political reporting from you. You were my first boss in the business. You didn't teach me about this. You didn't teach me to expect days like this and weeks like this and things that, I mean, you never taught me about this.
One has to think or hope, Ali, that the presidency of Donald Trump is sui generis in this regard, that no other president, hopefully, certainly not that has come along so far, and certainly, hopefully, nobody that's coming next would provoke this kind of act. But I think there's a longer view that we all need to take, which is something about President Trump has produced this sort of umbilical connection to millions of people in this country who were willing to do this, that were willing to undertake an illegal act to breach the security of the most sacred building in the United States Capitol, on behalf of that president. And what is it about him, and what does that tell us about future Republicans trying to somehow capture the magic that Donald Trump was able to capture without all the attendant decadence and lies and the thwarting of norms? And I think we're seeing different Republicans trying to figure that out. We had, of course, had Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, two senators, objecting to the certification of Joe Biden as the next president. That was their stab at kind of reaching out to the Trumpists, even though as constitutional lawyers, they know better. You have a Marco Rubio, perhaps, who's acknowledging that the government does have a role to play in helping prop people up economically. You know, we had President Trump advocating for $2,000 checks for people suffering from economic collapse around the coronavirus that the establishment Republicans wouldn't go for. You have sort of a Nikki Haley who's trying to take a more broad-based, less sort of racially tinged approach. She, of course, being the former governor of South Carolina, who saw to it that the Confederate flag was removed from her capital. All of these people are trying to find a piece of what was the magic of Trump without all of the corruption and the derangement. And it'll be interesting to see whether any of them can do that. Michael
Starr Hopkins, maybe there's a piece of something that can appeal to the Republican Party that's not got anything to do with Trump. An appeal to people, an empathy for people who are feeling passed by and disenfranchised by establishment people, whether they're Republicans or not, but can go in a completely different direction. So you don't end up having these Trump panderers who bring along the racism and the xenophobia with them, but just have conservative ideals that they want to discuss and debate in the arena of ideas.
Absolutely. There are lots of Republicans who I may disagree with, but I think are good people, and we can have conversation and figure out the best way to move the country forward. A lot of those people are in that Capitol, and they're not politicians, but they're the staff. They're the people who are behind the scenes, the people who really live in Washington, who make up the essence of this government. The people that are constantly under attack by Republicans and also by society as a whole, who think Washington is just this corporate governance and not a group of people who are all Americans. But I think we actually have a bigger problem. The bigger problem that we have right now is people are literally putting their political aspirations above country. They're willing to sell out the country to become celebrities on right-wing media and to curry favor with the Trump family. And that has consequences to it. We saw this coming. We saw Charlottesville. We heard the president's rhetoric on that dais 4 years ago during the inauguration where he talked about American carnage. Well, it's here, and people have to do something about it. What's the point in running for office if you lose your soul in gaining it? And that's where we are. The country is losing its soul if we're not careful, and we're dangerously close to not being able to hold institutions together. And it's scary.
And John, I mean, I always loved Theodore Roosevelt's speech about, the man in the arena and the idea that that's where it all goes down. But that's not where this is all going down. However you want to look at what's happened in the last several months, it is a coup attempt. It is an insurrection. attempt, and it is based on lies that mainstream members of Congress and mainstream Republicans and enablers of Donald Trump and people who still work for the Trump campaign and people who still work in the White House have enabled. This has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with whether you're a Democrat or a Libertarian or a Republican. This is lies and a coup attempt and an insurrection.
Absolutely. I mean, Trump has essentially convinced Republicans that conceding and adhering to the democratic process is a sign of weakness and is surrender. It's quite remarkable that after all of the events today, we still saw a majority of House Republicans continue to embrace this path towards objection. When, frankly, the violence that we saw today, the 4 people we saw die, that was a result of Trump's lies and their lies about the election. These people have become convinced that Trump lost the election due to mass voter fraud, which is, of course, baseless. That's why they gathered in Washington, and that's why they stormed the Capitol. And we saw an attempted coup in the temple of our democracy today. And it was, frankly, one of the most disturbing days in my lifetime and likely U.S. history.
Yeah, it really was. And let's not forget, 4 people lost their lives in this, Beth. So for all those people who are calling for the 25th Amendment, or for new impeachment. We've had calls for new impeachment. And there are a whole bunch of people who say, why bother with that? Donald Trump's on his way out of office in a couple of weeks. And there's people are hoping that New York State officials will go after Trump. If we don't have some consequence to this behavior, it normalizes it, right? That's the accusation that people like you and me have faced in media for 4 years, that Donald Trump has been normalized. He lies so much, and we haven't been able to catch every last one. The Washington Post keeps a list of them. But at some point, what's the consequence so that nobody else follows his blueprint?
Well, again, Trump is sui generis that way. His entire career has basically been a series of events and decisions where the things that have happened to other people don't happen to Trump. He seems to get away with everything he's ever done. And so that sort of emboldened him to just keep going, to keep pushing. One could say, well, he's faced the ultimate consequence here. He did not get reelected. But in his mind and in the minds of his supporters, it was all stolen from him. It was all rigged. It was all wrong. Even that statement that was released where he said he'd agree to the orderly transfer of power, he once again said that he'd won the election and that he was robbed. So this is the way Donald Trump processes things. Nothing's ever his fault. It's always somebody else's. He manages to escape like Houdini from every uncomfortable situation. But to your point about consequences, there need to be a lot. We certainly need to find out why the security was so lax in the Capitol and why all those protesters were able to get inside seemingly for hours before things were calmed down. We need to have some accountability from those people. What kind of consequences will they face going forward to never do this again?
What a remarkable 24 hours that we have all been through. Thank you for joining us. My panel will be back with me later in the hour, Beth, Michael, and John. We're going to have more on the ugliness that we witnessed today at the United States Capitol. Former federal prosecutor Glenn Kerr